This is The Chris Berry Show. Expert information on elder law, retirement, and estate planning. Information that you can understand. Here's your host, Chris Berry.
Welcome to The Chris Berry Show, where we talk wealth, estate, and tax planning for the second half of life. And we start every show off with a positive focus, so something positive that happened the previous week. It's something that I do with my family as we sit down for dinner every night. We go around the table and share something positive that happens. And I think it's a great way to start the show off is with that positive focus, get the week started off on the right foot. And this week, for my positive focus, I'm going to kind of continue the theme of last week's positive focus, is that we've gotten some of the numbers in from the Walk to End Alzheimer's. So each year, we're a big supporter of the Walk to End Alzheimer's. It's a devastating disease that currently there's still no cure for. And it's one of the biggest killers in terms of diseases or modes of death for people in America. And so it's very important. We're raising as much awareness and funds as we can. And so we just had the Walk to End Alzheimer's a couple of weeks ago, and we're just seeing some of the final numbers coming in. So our walk, our team, we raised over $12,000. Last time I checked, our total number was over $12,000 that we raised, and we were the biggest walk team as part of the walk. And then overall, the walk, which we're a committee member of, we raised over $166,000 to go to the Alzheimer's Association. So I want to thank everyone who helped contribute to that. We had a lot of great team members. Some of our clients really stepped up to help raise money and raise awareness for the Walk to End Alzheimer's. And that number's still growing. We still have more money coming in. But currently, as of today, we have over $166,000 raised. And the great thing about the walk is that this is just our walk. I think there's about 20 walks across the state of Michigan. So I know Traverse City just had their Walk to End Alzheimer's. So it's amazing seeing all these people coming together to raise awareness, raise funds for the Alzheimer's Association. Alzheimer's disease, it's one of those scary things out there. So it felt great to be able to see that money coming in. And then also there's some great news coming in on the congressional level to show that all of that advocacy work that people like Lauren Kovac have been putting in is actually paying off. So one of the things that we just saw come across the desk is that there's a new Alzheimer's bill that's going to raise more money, or there's going to be more money in the 2019 budget for Alzheimer's, where it's going to be raising another $425 million to raise the budget to $2.3 billion for Alzheimer's research and funding. And at the walk, we even had Mike Bishop there. So it was great. A lot of great news on the Alzheimer's front, both in terms of the Walk to End Alzheimer's as well as the congressional movement on this Alzheimer's bill. So we're pretty excited about that. So that was the great positive focus for this past week. Now, what we're going to do on our show today, in our second segment, we're going to get into some of the basics of IRA planning. I am a SLott Elite Advisor, IRA advisor. So I want to share some of Ed Slott's thinking, some of my thinking on IRAs and retirement planning. And today we're just going to talk about some of the basics, and maybe next week we'll get into some more advanced planning. But I wanted to touch upon that, to talk just kind of basically about retirement accounts and IRAs. I know last month or so, if you've been a listener of the Chris Berry Show, we've really focused on the long-term care dilemma, mainly because it is leading up to the Walk to End Alzheimer's. So we wanted to get that information out there. But now what we're going to do is going to switch gears a little bit and talk about IRAs. So we're going to talk about that on the second segment. And then the third segment of the Chris Berry Show, we're going to get into some questions and answers. So these are questions submitted by listeners, or actually I pulled a couple other questions. I have an interesting question that another attorney asked on one of the listservs that I'm going to share with you my answer to that. But if you do have questions, you can get those questions answered by giving us a call at 810-355-2584, or you can email us at askchris@thechrisberryshow.com, or you can go online to thechrisberryshow.com, and there'll be a spot where you can click and submit a question right there. And then if you do want your questions answered in real time, remember, we have weekly workshops. We call it clarity building workshops, where it helps you build clarity about planning for the second half of life, whether you're planning for yourself or you're planning for a loved one. And we do these workshops throughout Metro Detroit at one of our 4 different locations, whether it's Bloomfield Hills, where we have some workshops coming up, Novi, Livonia, or Brighton. So it gives you a chance to get your questions answered in real time. And we typically limit the participants to anywhere from 5 to 20 participants in these workshops, because we do want to make sure your questions get answered. And so you do have to RSVP. So if you do want to RSVP or get more information on one of our upcoming workshops, feel free to visit our website, thechrisberryshow.com. So that's going to be our show today. I'm pretty excited about it. And before we get into our second segment of dealing with or talking about the IRA basics, I just wanted to share some happenings this past week. So one of the big things that happened actually a couple of weeks ago was a change with regards to veterans benefits. So one of the big things, one of the ways that we see that you can pay for long-term care is with this little-known veterans benefit called the aid and attendance benefit. I say little known, but it's known more because we just had a big law change on it. So basically the way it worked is that if you met 5 requirements, and those 5 requirements were 90 days active duty, 1 day during a period of conflict, cannot be dishonorably discharged, and then if you had more long-term care costs going out than income coming in from Social Security and pension, and then if you met an asset test, then you could bring in an extra $1,000 to $2,000 a month tax-free from the VA. Now, the great thing about the program is that there wasn't really any look-back period, meaning you could be over in assets today, and then the next month we could set up a Veterans Asset Protection Trust, move the assets into the trust, and then get a veteran qualified. So what the rule change was, or the law change, and we knew it was coming, it's been around, been proposed since 2015, is that they were going to institute a 3-year look-back period. So now it kind of works like Medicaid, and Medicaid has a 5-year look-back period. Well, the VA benefit has a 3-year look-back period. I just thought it was interesting, this change. We're dealing with it in our office right now. We have a lot of claims that are in process with a lot of veterans and their families. And remember, these are veterans in need that have long-term care costs of $3,000, $5,000, $8,000 a month going out in long-term care costs. And by going for this benefit, we could bring an extra $2,000 a month tax-free to help pay for this devastating long-term care cost. But so we're dealing with this in the office, and we sent out an email to all of our clients letting them know about this rule change. And we even put things out through our social media channels, really trying to get the word out there about this change. Well, one of the interesting things was someone commented on one of these posts and said, well, it's about time that they ended these entitlements. And I thought that was an interesting comment from this individual who I won't name. And on one hand, I agree with him in the sense that I'm all for kind of trying to end some of the handouts and that type of thing. And I understand that from a governmental perspective, we're $21 trillion in debt. I certainly understand that and get that. And I don't want to pay any more taxes than anyone else. I'd much rather spend my money than letting the government spend my money. But I just thought that of all the people, so really, again, this is affecting veterans and surviving spouses. Of all the people that we're going to talk about or throw around the world entitlement, these are going to be the people that we're going to pick on. I just thought it was, it kind of ruffled my feathers a little bit, because these are people that served our country or the spouse of someone that served the country that had to make sacrifices. And these are the people that you're going to single out to take money out of their pockets to shuffle it somewhere else. It just really rubbed me the wrong way. So I understand from a governmental perspective why this 3-year rule is coming about. I get it, but of all the people or all of veterans and surviving spouses, I think we should do more to support them versus making it harder for them to get their veterans benefits. And I also say this and a little frustrated just because one of the claims that we're working on, the VA has just put roadblock after roadblock where sometimes claims can take over a year. And this one we actually have to go all the way to the appeal route. And I just feel bad for the veteran and surviving spouses that have to fight so hard to get these benefits that they're deserved. And now on top of this, with this rule change, they're making it even more difficult to receive those benefits. So that's, I guess, my negative focus. If I started off with a positive focus, it's something that we're dealing with right now in our office as we're trying to get these claims submitted before that change of law. And after that, there's still going to be things we can do for veterans and surviving spouses, but the rules are going to change. And that's one of the constants is that we find is that strategies and laws are constantly changing. And so that's why, as a firm and on the Chris Berry Show, we really focus just on this planning for the second half of life, planning for retirement. We're not doing a little bit of this and a little bit of that. We need to stay informed, stay on top of what's happening, stay on top of the law changes, stay on top of the latest strategies to help people plan, protect, and preserve to improve their quality of life. And along those lines, I had an interesting conversation with a colleague of mine. He's another certified old law attorney, another planner. He's out of Georgia, actually. And so occasionally, maybe once a month, we'll have conversations about what's new, what's changing, what's working, what are some new cutting-edge strategies. Because we look at it kind of like a puzzle, and we're always trying to put these puzzle pieces together the best we could. And so we were talking last night, and he shared, and we were kind of working through an innovative little strategy. And so what this strategy is the concept, and for right now what we'll call it a family pension trust. So what this concept was taking one of our trusts that can protect against lawsuits and protect against devastating costs of long-term care, and it can provide asset protection for the next generation, protecting your kids from things like divorces and lawsuits and creditor actions and bankruptcies. But this concept was interesting. It was utilizing some financial and legal and tax planning kind of all in one ball. And so the concept is that if we take some amount of non-qualified money, so think of it as non-IRA money. So maybe you just received an inheritance or you just sold a business and you have this investable money sitting there, whether it's in brokerage accounts or checking or you wouldn't have a lot of sitting in checking, but you have this non-qualified money, so non-IRA, non-401k money. This isn't going to work with 401k or IRA money. But let's say you sold a business or you just got an inheritance or just had a loved one pass away and received a life insurance payout. So what the strategy is that we change ownership, take it out of your name, but put it into this asset protection trust. So now what we've done is we've protected this money from lawsuits, from long-term care costs, from life throwing you a curveball. But then the way that we can structure this is that what we can do is we can create basically a pension for your family, a legacy for your family, so that you can use this money, you can create income for you while you're alive, and then when you pass away, what we can do is we can create income for your loved ones as well. And I'm not just talking about a spouse, I'm talking about maybe kids or even grandchildren, because the grandchildren, the kids, they're not going to have pensions moving forward. We see pensions kind of going away. And when we do our workshops, a lot of times I'll ask, raise your hand if you have a pension. And over the years, we've seen less and less hands going up. But what we're able to do is we take this lump sum of money and we put it into this asset protection trust that protects you. But then also what it does is that it can flow down to the other generations, to flow down to the kids and the grandkids in a very tax efficient way. And it's a way that we can do this so that we can create income that's protected from a divorce, protected from lawsuits, protected from creditors for your children or your grandchildren. And it's cool because basically you're creating a legacy. They're going to be receiving a check that was from grandma or from grandpa or had your name on it. And so they're going to remember you every year through this family pension plan or family pension trust that we can create. And again, the younger the individuals, the more kind of bang for your buck that we can create with this. So if you are looking to leave a legacy to the next generation, and not everyone is, a lot of people look at estate planning as, or the perfect estate plan is when the last check bounces, that's when you're going to cash out. But if you are looking at a way to leave a legacy, leave money to the next generation, this concept of a family pension plan can make a lot of sense because it creates income, lifetime income for you while you're alive. The principle of it would be protected from divorces, lawsuits, creditor action, bankruptcy, long-term care costs because we've put it into an asset protection trust. And then when you pass away, in your trust, you can direct where this income will go. So this income could go to the children, could go down to the grandchildren, or it could go to your children, and then if your child passes away, down to the next generation as well, so that you can create this lifetime legacy, this pension that's not going to be available for the kids and the grandkids. So, we were just talking about kind of this concept and working out the details and sharing some experiences using it. So it's just one of the things that the laws are constantly changing, and that's what we're trying to do is stay on top of the different strategies, the different law changes. Sometimes the law change has a negative effect for seniors and those nearing retirement. For example, this negative VA benefit rule change. Or we can have positives. So the positives of this Alzheimer's bill going through, positives of this relatively new strategy of creating multi-generational wealth with this family pension trust or family pension plan. So things are constantly changing, but it's my job to stay on top of those changes. And each week on the Chris Berry Show, we're going to share the latest and the greatest when it comes to planning for the second half of life, wealth, estate, and tax planning for the second half of life. So stay with me in the next segment as we're going to get into some of the IRA basics. So that family pension plan, that's a little bit complicated. We're going to simplify a little bit on our next segment. And then our third segment, questions and answers, as always.
If you or a loved one is facing long-term care costs, make sure you talk with certified elder law attorney Chris Berry from the Elder Care Firm. He can help you, like he did Keith Gerard's family. Here's Keith.
Basically, it's my in-laws. They're both 90 and they can't live on their own or anything, and they don't have enough money to go in assisted living. We went to Chris Berry to get the VA benefits, and he said, well, we can get almost $2,000 a month, which they can put towards assisted living. It was a big relief. Most lawyers are pretty sharp, but Chris, he knows exactly his business, and it's a shame that these vets have to go through all these processes, but I guess we need people like Chris to help us out. He made it so easy for us.
Hello, I'm attorney Chris Berry. The Elder Care Firm is here to help you and your family find solutions. Call us today.
Get the governmental benefits you deserve. The Elder Care Firm is ready to help you. Visit theeldercarefirm.com today or call 810-214-3800.
And welcome back to the Chris Berry Show, where we talk wealth, estate, and tax planning for the second half of life. So we just covered kind of a unique planning strategy of kind of creating a lifetime of income using non-qualified assets, and not just income for you, but creating basically pensions for the next generation, and doing it inside of a trust so that it's protected from a divorce, a lawsuit, a creditor action, bankruptcy. So that's true legacy planning. And again, that's not for everyone. Some people, they just want to make sure their money lasts as long as they do. And then if anything's left over, then that's great. But again, everyone has different goals with their planning. And that's why we really take a educational and a holistic approach to developing a plan that makes the most sense for you. Because every family is going to be a little bit different, and everyone has different goals and desires with their planning. And it's our goal to help you kind of achieve your goals. So, in the last segment, I talked about a strategy with regards to non-qualified money. And so in this segment, we're going to switch gears a little bit and focus on that qualified money. And so a lot of times people get confused on what's qualified versus non-qualified. Well, what we're talking about is a tax qualification. There has to be some type of kind of tax difference with the qualified money. So when we're talking about qualified money, we're referring to things like 401ks, IRAs, Roth IRAs, Roth 401ks, 403bs, 457, etc. So think of it, if it has initials or numbers next to it, it might be a qualified account. And those numbers and letters, what they're referring to is the tax code, actually. That's how you can kind of think of it as qualified money. And so with that qualified money, typically what happens is either the money will grow tax-free, and you can take it out tax-free. So that would be like a Roth. So a Roth, you've already paid income tax on it, but then when you take the money out, or the growth continues to grow tax-free, and when you take the money out of that Roth, you can take that money out tax-free. So basically with the Roth, what you're doing is you're paying a tax on the seed, not on the harvest. Versus your traditional IRAs, basically with those, you're putting money into it income tax free. So you don't pay any income tax when you put the money into the IRA, but when you take it out, that's when you have to pay the income tax. And typically those are going to be your 401ks that maybe you roll over to the IRAs. So for a lot of people, those are their largest assets in addition to the home, is these qualified accounts, whether it's the IRA, the 401k, the Roth, etc. So what I wanted to do is just cover some of the basics. And as one of SLott's elite IRA advisors, I wanted to share some of the thinking from SLott, who's nationally recognized as one of the gurus when it comes to retirement accounts and distributions. So I wanted to cover some of the IRA basics. And so first IRA basic that I want to share is that you can plan now and retire twice as rich. So that's number one. Plan now and retire twice as rich. And so Ed shares that studies show that people who become educated about their finances and play a role in planning and monitoring their IRAs wind up twice as rich as those who haven't had a clue. And this is according to a Dartmouth-Wharton study. And basically, from that study, 3 points that came about from that. First of all, wisdom pays. So kind of the smarter you are, the more educated you are with regards to your retirement and retirement accounts, better off you're going to be. Money grows, so those who plan are more likely to end up at retirement with twice the wealth of those who do not plan. So think about it for a second. Do you have a financial plan? Do you have a plan for retirement? And then start early. Those who are financially literate when young are more likely to plan for retirement. So again, think, do you have a plan in place? If not, maybe now's the time to start. You can't go back in time, but today's a good day to have that plan. And if you want to take the next step when it comes to developing a plan, holistic plan for wealth, estate, and tax planning for the second half of life, I recommend you check out one of our workshops that we do about once a week, where we talk about some of these topics, and we talk about tax planning and what to do with your IRAs and 401ks and how to avoid paying unnecessary taxes. So the second thing Ed wants to share with us with regards to IRA basics, avoid past year's mistakes. So basically every year you get to wipe the slate clean. So avoid some of the mistakes from last year. One of the big mistakes I always see people make is not utilizing their brackets very well. So what I'm talking about is your tax brackets, or that marginal income tax rate. Depending on the amount of income you have coming in each year, that's going to determine the amount or the highest tax that you have. So one of the things that we do for our clients is run what we call a tax map, where we can look at, okay, how much income do they have coming in? Well, let's look at, if we're to take some money out of our IRAs or traditional accounts, pay the income tax now, will that bump us up into another bracket, and whether that makes sense or not. So biggest thing is kind of avoiding some of the mistakes from previous year. Also, it's important to keep some cash aside for your IRA so that you don't have to take out of your IRA during market downturns. That's getting into a sequence of return risk issue. And so number 3, understand the IRA rules for 2018. So first, we need to understand our contribution levels. So up through age 49, you can contribute $5,500 to an IRA. Age 50 and over, you could contribute up to $6,500. So there's a catch-up period. And then understand the conversions, okay? So you can always do IRA conversions. Those are contributions, but if you want to do a Roth conversion, if you're willing to pay the income tax, you can convert as much as you want if you're over 59 and a half. And then number 4, don't pay attention to the myths. So let me ask you if any of these myths sound familiar. And some of these things we've talked about previously on the Chris Berry Show. So first of those myths, in the future, my taxes will be lower. So many people kind of erroneously believe that taxes are going to be lower in the future. And there's 2 ways to look at it. You can look at it as marginal tax rates. So do you think in the future that the government's going to lower marginal tax rates any lower than they are? Most people say no, because of reasons we've already talked about. For example, we're $21 trillion in debt. We have this Medicare and Social Security, the unfunded liabilities of that. In fact, we were just talking in our last team meeting about how when Social Security was created, the Social Security kicked in at age 65, but the average life expectancy was 63. So take a minute and think about that Social Security initially, when it was started, was really a longevity hedge. Now it's an important leg of most people's retirement. With all this debt, a lot of people think that the government has to raise taxes in the future. And then the second piece of that is that, well, maybe my taxes will be lower in the future when I retire, if I haven't retired yet. But what people don't realize is that they have these sources of income, things like pensions potentially. And then when you turn 70 and a half, then you have to take out your required minimum distributions from your tax-deferred accounts. Guess what? Both of those are going to be taxed. And then if both of those things are going to be taxed, then what else might get taxed? Your Social Security. So now you have the Social Security, you have your pensions, you have your required minimum distributions all kicking in at age 70. And then what happens is you lose a lot of the deductions that most people have while they're working. For example, things like mortgage or dependents or contributions. A lot of those go away in retirement. So on one hand, you have more income than you think, and on less, you have less tax deductions than you think. So in the future, a lot of people find that they are, at the same tax bracket, or if not higher in retirement, and then B, couple that with the government maybe raising taxes in the future. So that's why a lot of the strategies we talk about is getting out of that partnership with the Internal Revenue Service. It probably makes sense to explore paying more tax now so that you don't have to pay even more tax in the future. Because think of it as a mortgage. You basically have a mortgage on those tax-deferred accounts, your IRAs and 401ks. You can't just take that money out. You have to pay the tax man. And so doesn't it make sense to get out of that partnership sooner rather than later, especially if we think we're going to pay taxes are going to go up in the future with the $21 trillion of debt that we're carrying right now? So again, a big myth there is taxes will be lower. Another big myth is that you'll work longer. So when portfolios were down, many people shrugged and say they'll just have to work longer. It sounds good, but in reality, chances are you won't want to work longer in the future. Another big myth is that pensions will kick in. Well, as we all know, that pensions, those are disappearing left and right. Even those that were promised a pension, whether through restructuring or bankruptcies, those pensions are going away. Another myth, Social Security will start at 62. Well, it can start at 62, but it doesn't have to. And a lot of times if you do take Social Security early, then you're going to be taking a pay cut for the rest of your retirement. Another big myth, I can count on my inheritance. Well, that's just not the case. What we find is people are living longer, long-term care costs are kicking in, and like I said, a lot of people feel that the best estate planners go when the last check bounces. So don't always count on that inheritance. And so number 5, basic thing that SLott wants us to understand is why bother saving in an IRA? So if you're contributing at work, you may be wondering why you need an IRA on top of that. And I'd even say that you might want to look at a Roth IRA. And the reason for that you need to look at outside of just your 401k is that now these days employers are putting the responsibility on us on the people, on employees to basically manage their own finances. So if you look in the past, we had pensions. Well, pensions are pretty straightforward. It's basically you're going to get an income stream. You have no decision making. And then they switched to these contribution plans of things like 401ks, and they said that they'll match, and now sometimes the matching is even going away. So you can't just rely on your employer's sponsored plan. And also, if you were to invest inside of an IRA versus your 401k, a lot of times you're limited in your choices. So guess what? Certain companies, things like Fidelity, they pay money to be a part or be an offering or be an option as part of these 401ks. And maybe you don't want to invest your money in a Fidelity fund. Maybe you want to invest your money outside of that. Well, with an IRA, you're in more control. You have more options. In fact, some of our clients invest their IRA, they invest in real estate. A lot of people don't realize that you can invest in real estate inside of your IRA. There's a lot of rules around that, self-directed IRAs, so that might be a topic for another show. But just understand that with an IRA, unlike a 401k, you have a lot more options. Now, what you do lose is the match. So if you do have a 401k option at work and they offer a match, I would always take that match because that's free money. So you always want to take that free money. Now, what I would suggest is you explore whether your company offers, if they do have a 401k and a matching program, see if they offer a Roth 401k option. So this is an important distinction, is just understanding the differences between a traditional versus Roth. And it could be a traditional IRA or a traditional 401k or a Roth 401k or a Roth IRA. And I kind of commented on it already, but with the traditional IRA, what you're taking is pre-tax dollars, investing it, getting the growth, and then when you take the money out, that money comes out and you have to pay income tax on it. So you're getting taxed on the harvest. Compared to the Roth options, which again is you're taxed on the seed. So you pay the income tax now, but then any growth, when you take that money out, that money comes out tax-free. So it's a way that you can create tax-free income in retirement is by looking at that Roth option. So if your company does offer a 401k matching program, see if they offer a Roth option as part of that 401k. More and more companies are offering a Roth 401k option. Now, the way it works is you can contribute post-tax dollars to that Roth 401k, and then the company will match the money into the traditional 401k. So they will match, and you always want to take that free money, but then the money outside, or the match money that they put in cannot go into the Roth option. It has to go into the traditional 401k, which is going to be the pre-tax money. Now, you still want to do it because it's free money, but that match has to go into the traditional 401k option. So again, those are just some of the basics with regards to IRAs and 401ks, and it's out of SLott's Retirement Decision Guide 2018. It's a great resource, and he has 125 ways to save and stretch your wealth. And if you want to learn more about some of those tax-saving strategies to stretch your wealth, give us a call or visit our website and sign up for one of our weekly workshops. We call it Clarity Building Workshops, where you learn wealth, estate, and tax planning strategies for retirement. So we talk about the wills and the trusts and the powers of attorney. We talk about tax savings, tax strategies. We talk about a variety of different topics, long-term care costs. And we do these workshops throughout Metro Detroit at our Bloomfield Hills, our Brighton, Novi, and Livonia offices. And if you want more information on that, go to thechrisberryshow.com, where you can sign up or see a list of our upcoming workshops, or give us a call anytime. We're always available. We don't always answer, but you can leave us a voicemail at 810-355-2584, or just shoot us an email at askchris@thechrisberryshow.com. In the subject, put workshops, and we'll send you a list of our upcoming workshops. We love seeing listeners of the Chris Berry Show at our weekly workshops. So join us in our next segment as we're going to get into some of the questions and answers. And sometimes these are questions we get in our workshops. So join us as we get into these questions and answers. Hopefully you'll find it informative. And if you do have a question, always shoot it over to us and we'll take a shot at answering it.
If you or a loved one is facing long-term care costs, make sure you talk with certified elder law attorney Chris Berry from the Elder Care Firm, like Jennifer did from Howell.
This past summer, my mom had to transition into a nursing home. So we contacted Chris to help get things in order. You know, I wanted the best. I wanted somebody who knew what they were doing. Chris was able to help save a lot of that money that my mom and dad both worked so hard for. I thought that everything would have to go to the nursing home, but it didn't. He was able to save us half of everything that would have gone if we hadn't contacted the Elder Care Firm. And we're all happy about that. Don't go to the nursing home without contacting Chris first.
Hello, I'm attorney Chris Berry. The Elder Care Firm is here to help you and your family find solutions. Call us today.
Protect your assets from probate, long-term care costs, the IRS, and get the governmental benefits you deserve. Visit theeldercarefirm.com today or call 810-214-3800. 810-214-3800.
And welcome back to the Chris Berry Show, where we talk wealth, estate, and tax planning for the second half of life. So in this segment, we're going to get into some of the questions and answers we've had from our listeners. And again, if you do have any questions, you can submit a question to us via email, askchris@thechrisberryshow.com, or give us a call at 810-355-2584, or via the web, by going to thechrisberryshow.com, and there will be a spot where you can submit any questions. And also, if you go to thechrisberryshow.com, or you can listen to past episodes, and you can also hear us on iTunes and Spotify as well. So all you have to do is search for The Chris Berry Show if you want to listen to any of the past episodes. And we've had some really good past episodes. So with that, let's get into our questions. So the first question here, is there a certain balance I should keep in my checking account when my retirement is approaching? And this is from Sebastian. I am 4 years away from retirement, and I already have enough income for retirement. I have a lot of money in my checking account. Is there a certain balance I should keep in my checking account when my retirement accounts are set? Well, Sebastian, what I'd recommend is taking what I call the bucket plan approach. Bucket plan, it's a book that I actually helped a colleague of mine write, Jason Smith. But basically the concept is that we have a now bucket, a soon bucket, and a later bucket of money. And so our later bucket of money, that's going to be your retirement accounts. Okay, that's money that you're going to touch later. Your now bucket of money should be the money that's available for basically your needs now and maybe your needs throughout the year. So basically 1 year's worth of income if you are in retirement. If you're still working, then you don't need to have that income because you have your wages. But if you are retired and you have an income gap, you need to make sure that you have that income available for the year. And then any expenses, so any planned expenses. So planning on taking a big trip somewhere, looking at putting a new roof on the house, kind of big expenses should be in that now bucket of money as well. And then whatever your emergency or comfort fund is. So that number is different for everybody. A lot of times it might be like 6 months worth of expenses or 6 months paychecks. And so that's kind of that money that helps you sleep easy at night. And all of that money should be basically in your checking, savings, money market. So it's not, if the market goes down, you're not going to lose anything, but you're not really participating in any growth in those either. So that's the trade-off. But it's safe and liquid, and if you need it, you can get it right away. So that's your now bucket of money. Your later bucket of money, that's money that you're going to use maybe 10 years from now. So that's might be your retirement accounts where you said you're all set. But then we need to calculate a soon bucket of money because we don't want to overload our now bucket of money because we're missing out on growth. Because if it's sitting in the checking account, you're not earning much, are you? You're not even keeping up with inflation. You're basically going broke slowly. So instead, we need to figure out how much money should be in the soon or later bucket. So we would look at moving money from that checking or savings account and finding a purpose for it. Because right now it's just sitting there and it's kind of dying on the vine. We need to find a purpose for it. So what we would do is we would calculate, okay, how much money do you think you're going to need over the next 10 years? So any big planned expenses. So for me, I have my children are 5 and 8. So I'm looking at about 10 years from now, I'm going to have to start paying for some college for these kids. And unless they knock it out with a scholarship, maybe I can have them try to become a kicker on the football team or something like that. But I've earmarked some money, or I have to set aside money to pay for college. So I know that money should be invested maybe a little bit more safely than my money for retirement. Similar concept with the soon bucket. So maybe over the next 10 years, are you going to retire? So maybe 5 years from now, are you going to retire? Well, that means that we need to fund 5 years of your retirement. So that money would probably be in that soon bucket of money. But if you say, you know what, I don't really have any big expenses coming up, I'm 10 years outside of retirement, then maybe we look at investing more aggressively. Because typically that soon bucket of money, that's going to be money that's a little bit more conservative than that later bucket, but you're going to be at least keeping up with inflation, hopefully. But if you say, you know what, Chris, this money, I'm not going to need it over the next 10 years, then what I would suggest is that you kind of invest that more aggressively, whatever that means to you, and that would be later bucket money. And so one of the things that we do, we use certain tools. So I have a tool that we could use, Sebastian, to help you understand how much risk you're willing to take on with that money. And I'm going to have you, here's a website, www.riskscorenow.com. So if you go to that website, you can find out what your risk tolerance is. What is your risk score? Ask you a couple questions, and then based on how the market will perform, kind of shoots out a risk score. So how much risk you're willing to take on. So that'd be something that I'd suggest for you, Sebastian, is figure out how much risk you're willing to take on with regards to that money. And looking, kind of rereading your question, it says, Sebastian, you're 4 years away from retirement. So what I would suggest is that you figure out what your income gap is. So when you retire, how much money are you going to lose from your salary? But then if you have any Social Security or pensions kicking in, what is that balance, or what is that difference? And then that difference, you would want to make sure that you have about 6 years of that stocked away in that soon bucket of money. So this is money that's a little more conservative, so that if we have another 2008 happen, you're not going to take a 50% pay cut in your retirement. So I would think of having maybe 6 years worth of income stocked away in that soon bucket. Maybe that balance in your checking and savings account can help you accomplish that. The other option with that is that if it is a large amount, you could look at, because it is non-qualified money, one of the things we could look at doing is something we talked about in the first segment, is looking at creating that family pension plan, where basically we create an asset protection trust, move that non-qualified money into the trust, and it could create an income stream for you, maybe kicking in 4 years. And then if you were to pass away, that income stream can continue down for your family as well. So something to think about, a lot of options. You're in a good position to have your retirement part set, and you have some options there, Sebastian. Another option might be looking at a long-term care or potentially creating another form of tax-free retirement income in retirement. So you have a lot of options there, and especially with it being non-qualified money, non-IRA money, it gives you some more options. So hopefully that was helpful. Now let's get into our second question. So the second question, I may be receiving an inheritance from my uncle's estate, and I'm on Medicaid. And this is from Doug. I'm worried the inheritance will knock me off my benefits. My uncle is still alive and just told me he planned on including me. What can I do? Well, Doug, there's not much you can do, but what I would suggest is that you have a conversation with your uncle to say that, look, if you are leaving this money to me, there's probably a good way and a not as good way to do that. So what I would suggest is that if your uncle could work to put together an estate plan, a trust, and in that trust, he could include language so that whatever you would inherit would be held in trust so as to not disqualify you from any type of governmental benefits that you're receiving. So we call this a supplemental needs trust. And we build it into a lot of the trusts that we do for our clients, so that if we do have a loved one or a family member who is receiving any type of governmental benefits, we don't want it to go outright to them because it's going to disqualify them from Medicaid or Social Security or whatever it may be. But instead, we have it held in trust where those governmental benefits can pay that base level of care, but then there's this pot of resources to pay for additional services. So that's something that you could look at doing, Doug. Really, there's nothing that you can do. If the money comes outright to you, then you're kind of stuck with it. But if you're able to have a conversation with your uncle ahead of time, and your uncle is able to include that supplemental needs language in the trust, then you could keep your benefits plus also have this pot of resources to improve your quality of life. So it's going to be more of a discussion with your uncle. Your uncle's going to have to do some planning. So hopefully that was helpful, Doug. Now, getting into our third question. And this third question is from Laura. Can I collect Social Security on my ex-spouse's record even if my spouse has remarried? So can I collect Social Security on my ex-spouse's record even if my spouse has remarried? The answer to this is it depends, but most likely yes. So if you were to get divorced and you've been married for over 10 years, you have the ability to claim on your ex-spouse, even if they are remarried. And keep in mind, it's not going to affect the ex-spouse's Social Security. So it's not like you're taking away money from him or her, even if you wanted to. So it doesn't have an effect on them. But what it does is allows you to be able to make a claim. So really, how this came about is we would have, not to be sexist, but we would have a husband who is the main breadwinner, and then we'd have a stay-at-home wife who didn't have as many quarters of earnings for Social Security purposes. And so if there was a divorce, the husband had this much larger Social Security, and that kind of working or homemaker wife who probably put in more of the work once they got divorced, she wouldn't have as much to show for Social Security. So Social Security kind of instituted these rules that allowed that spouse to make a claim on an ex-spouse. And that claim is available even if the ex-spouse has remarried. Now, it wouldn't be true if you marry, but it would be true if the ex-spouse has married. It's also even true if that ex-spouse were to pass away. So if it becomes a deceased spouse, deceased ex-spouse, you would still be able to make a claim. So hopefully that was helpful. Social Security can be very complicated. And occasionally we do Social Security workshops and help people time their Social Security to optimize when to take Social Security, whether you take it at 62 or full retirement age or age 70. But one of the interesting strategies, especially if you are going to delay taking your Social Security to let it grow, because it grows at basically 8% a year, is that can be part of a strategy that will help minimize taxes as well. Because if you let your Social Security grow to age 70, then what else kicks in at age 70 and a half? You have to take required minimum distributions. So let's say you were to retire at age 62. Could you claim Social Security at that point? Yeah. But maybe it makes sense to pay the income tax on those qualified accounts, live off of the assets, move money from the tax deferred, pay the income tax, and use that money to allow your Social Security to grow so that you can diffuse that tax time bomb of 70 and a half, but also allowing your Social Security to grow. So that's just one of the possible strategies out there. Kind of got off on a tangent there. But whenever I see Social Security, I just love sharing some of the cool ideas on how to utilize it or maximize it. And especially minimizing taxes as well, because I'd rather spend my money than let the government spend my money. Now, the fourth question, and this question I actually took from a listserv. So as attorneys, we're always sharing ideas and kind of asking questions between ourselves as attorneys and planners and that type of thing. And so this was a question from another attorney. And so he's preparing a asset protection trust for an individual, and they have a lot of qualified accounts. So again, we spent a lot of time talking about what is a qualified account versus a non-qualified account. Remember, qualified accounts are things like IRAs or Roths or 401ks. And if you remember at the beginning of the show today, we talked about a strategy for using non-qualified funds and putting it into a trust and creating income for your lifetime, but also creating basically pensions for the next generation. We term this a family pension plan. And we talked about doing that for non-qualified money. So Don here, the attorney, is asking, so he's preparing this asset protection trust, which so far so good in terms of being able to do this family pension plan. But the problem is that this single client has over $1 million of qualified money, IRA money. And so the problem with setting up an asset protection trust sometimes, depending on the trust, and it gets a little complicated, but basically you cannot put an IRA directly into an asset protection trust, like a castle trust or a family pension trust, because you'd have to pay the income tax on it. So Don is kind of stuck in this issue of creating an asset protection trust for his clients, but having a question of what to do with all of this qualified pre-tax money. And so this is something that we deal with on a regular basis. And basically, you have three options when it comes to the IRAs. And those three options come down to pay the tax, insure it, or procrastinate. So it might be helpful if I explain that. But what we could do is look at paying the tax in an intelligent manner. So maybe over the next couple of years, we move money from the tax-deferred account, pay the income tax, and then put it into the trust. This can make sense for a lot of different reasons, because it's good tax planning, because we think taxes are going to go up in the future. It builds in the asset protection and moves more money into the trust, so more money is protected. So it just makes a lot of sense, and that's one of my favorite strategies is look at pay the tax now. Or now over time. The second option is we can insure it. So we can look at asset-based long-term care. So in this situation, Don was concerned about his client needing long-term care. That was one of the reasons they set up the asset protection trust. Well, we can look at an asset-based long-term care strategy, which we've talked about many times on the Chris Berry Show, and you can go to past episodes. And then the third option is we can procrastinate. And I don't say that to be flippant, but understand that we always have crisis planning strategies available. So if you have a loved one that is in a nursing home, we can protect roughly at least half of that money, but we'd have to pay the income tax on it. So you could always procrastinate on the IRA money, deal with it at the time of needing care. So I just saw that question come across, and I was like, well, this is what we do every day, Don. Let me show you exactly what we do. And I wanted to share that with the listeners of the Chris Berry Show, because we want to kind of pull back the curtain on some of these sophisticated planning strategies that the ultra-wealthy, they have these family offices, but we want that for everyday Americans as well. We want you to have the same planning strategies, the same level of sophistication. So that's why we share this educational information with you every week, and I hope you join us next week on the Chris Berry Show as we talk more about retirement planning, financial planning, tax planning for the second half of life. So join me next week. As always, make it a great week, and I hope to share more positive focuses with you next week. Thank you.
Learn more about Chris Berry and the Elder Care Firm by visiting online at MichiganEstatePlanning.com. That's MichiganEstatePlanning.com. You can also call Chris Berry at 888-390-4360. 888-390-4360. This program content reflects the opinions of Chris Berry and his guests, not the Elder Care Firm, Prosperity Capital Advisors, or the C.J. Berry Group, and is subject to change at any time without notice. Content provided herein is for informational purposes only and should not be used or construed as investment or legal advice or a recommendation regarding the purchase or sale of any security or to follow any legal or tax strategy. There's no guarantee that the strategist's statements, opinions, or forecast provided herein will prove to be correct. Past performance is not a guarantee of future results. Indices are not available for direct investment. Any investor who attempts to mimic the performance of an index would incur fees and expenses, which would reduce returns. All investing involves risk, including the potential for loss of principal. There's no guarantee that any investment plan or strategy will be successful. We recommend that you consult with a professional dedicated to your needs. This program is furnished by the Elder Care Firm.